All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 3C of this video series. And I think this will be the last one about PG training in the UK. So I'm going to start with the questions. Apurva, could you please explain us the difference between these three terminologies, CCT, CESR CP, and CESR? It took me at least a good couple of years to figure out what they actually mean. And sometimes I still feel lost when someone asks me questions about this. So what do they actually mean with regards to the training course?
Okay, welcome back everyone. So I think this is one of the most common questions we get often because it is so confusing and there are like few minor differences between each of them. So before we dwell into each terminologies, let's broadly classify the post in the UK into training posts and non-training posts. So out of the three terminologies you mentioned, CESR CP and CCT fall into training posts.
Okay.
CESR is a non-training post. All right. So let's start with CCT.
CCT. Okay.
Yeah. So if you have completed all your postgraduate training in the UK, for example, if you've completed ST1 to ST6 or more, the entire duration of your postgraduate training in the UK, you get something called as CCT, that certification of completion of training. And once you get a CCT, and if you have done all your exams, you get your name registered in the GMC specialist register, and then you can become a consultant in the UK. Right? That's CCT if you've done all your training in the UK.
Okay.
So if you've done
straightforward, simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've done part of your training in some other country, for example, India, for example, if you have done 3 years of your training in India, then you come to UK, then you apply for higher specialty training in the UK, get into a training post, and then finish your training. That is called as CESR CP. CESR stands for Certificate of Eligibility for Specialist Registration, and CP stands for Combined Program. That essentially signifies you've done half of your training in some other country apart from UK. So that's CESR CP. You do half of your training in some other country, come to the UK, apply for training post, you get into the training post and finish your training. That is CESR CP. All right.
Sorry to interrupt there. And when you say higher specialist training, you mean people who finish a part of their training in India, get the competencies, and then just join into ST4, 5, 6. The ST4, 5, 6 years are called as the higher specialist training. Is that correct?
So even if you join ST3, that's still a CESR CP. Well, there is another bit of another terminology there. So we'll call DREAM. We'll come to that in after we explain all of these first.
And quick question before we move on. Both these posts do get a training number, CESR CP and CCT.
Yeah.
Both these get the training number.
That's correct.
CP
so
and CCT.
Both CESR CP and CCT, if you join a training post, essentially if you join a training post in the UK, that's kind of joining any postgraduate training program, MD, DNB, MCH, or DM in India, and you get something called as national training number, so that your name is formally in the training register. So both with, if you join ST1 or if you join higher specialty training in the UK, you get something called as a training number. And to join a training post in the UK, for example, if you have done part of your training in India, you come to the UK, if you want to join a training post, you'll have to apply separately for a training post. And there will be usually interview and kind of verification of all your documents, and they give you a national rank. And they can, depending upon the national rank, you can select which place you want to go to or which hospital you want to join into.
Fine. So that was CESR, CP, and CCT.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So what is CESR then?
So CESR, like I mentioned earlier, it stands for Certificate of Eligibility for Specialist Registration. So if you do not want to join a training post, or for some reason, if you're not able to get into a training post, if you want to still become a consultant, there is an alternate pathway called CESR. So essentially in CESR, you will not get something called as a national training number. However, if you show all the documents or all the proof saying that you have done exactly the same thing what the trainees do, then you can get into GMC specialist register. So only thing that's different, I can't speak for all specialties. For emergency medicine, possibly the work and the environment you work is still the same. There's no change. but there will not be any formal assessment every year. Nobody is going to check what you have done and what you have not. You'll have to do all by yourself and make a document of everything you have done. And by end of maybe say 3 to 4 years, you'll have to compile all those documents, get signatures from all the consultants, and apply for specialist registration. That's called CESR. So basically it is doing essentially the same work without a training number. And the onus is on you to prove that you've done exactly the same thing the trainees do.
Fine.
So if you ask me what are the advantages and disadvantages of being in either training post and non-training post. So if the advantages of being in a training post is that every year you get kind of formally assessed about what you've done over the year. So your documents kind of get automatically checked every year. People say at the end of like 3 to 4 years, once you finish your training, getting into the specialist register is comparatively easier if you're in a training post. But the disadvantages, if you can call it so, some people might like it, but it's probably personal specific to each person. Some people may like it and some people may not. So every 6 months you get rotated in a different hospital. So it's
difficult to adjust.
Difficult to get used to a different environment, different people. So the same thing gets repeated every 6 months. So you get posted to a different hospital every 6 months or 1 year. So, and you'll have to, if the hospitals are kind of far away, then you'll have to kind of think of changing your base from where you travel and things like that. So if you're having a family, that could be a problem as well. Whereas in CESR, you kind of are generally located at one single hospital, and you get used to working in a single hospital for about 3 to 4 years. That some people find it easier.
So essentially, there's no straight answer for this. When somebody asks, what do you think, should I do CESR or CP? It's very much dependent on your personal circumstances, whether you have family, where your spouse works, what does she do, you have a kid, because you might need to move your house, leave your child's school, and your spouse might need to change work or look for a new job. So it can be difficult with the training post. And I think that's one reason people who are ahead, they have a lot of experience back home in their own countries, or even in the UK. Sometimes they switch to training where they are kind of more flexible and they can move things at their own pace. On the other side, in training, you have to do certain things within a specific time period, which can sometimes be difficult.
True. That's
sounds good. Do you want to add anything else to this?
Just to add on one more thing, there was a recent kind of change in guideline about people who are in CESR CP. They were recommending that they should be given CCT as well. But I'm not entirely sure about that guideline. That is something to do with the European working guideline. And if you have done probably, I think you'll need to double check this, but if you've done probably 5 years of training in the UK, and if you're still in CESR CP, you could probably still be given CCT. But I'm not entirely 100% sure about this.
Does that, in the grand scheme of things, does that even make a difference? If whatever route I take out of these three, eventually my goal, or most people's, they look at becoming consultant.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that really matter?
If you ask me, is there a difference between all these terminologies by the end of it all? No. So if you're planning to work in the UK, there is no difference. Once you become a consultant, there is no difference if you've done CESR CP, CCT, or CESR. So everybody is the same, and you get a same post essentially. So there is no difference if you plan to work in the UK. But again, if you plan to work in some other countries like Australia or Middle East, there might be minor differences. And if you've done CCT, that it might be slightly easier to get a job. But again, I think it is just semantics rather than any actual difference.
This is what I have heard, that sometimes they ask have you been CCT'd, or have you done your CCT? And if you're CESR CP, again, most people get a date when they say, I've got a CCT date. That essentially means when you can, or even you will become a consultant.
Exactly.
But again, this is what I've understood. If you want to work in other countries like Singapore, Middle East, I think CCT carries a little more advantage. However, I'm not entirely sure of this. But this is what I've overheard.
Yeah, I think it is partly because CCT is a kind of very formal pathway. And
And you
when
do
you say
full training in the
full
UK,
training
so
in the
essentially
UK,
6
and
or
also
8
when you
years,
say
whatever.
CESR CP or CESR, many people do not know these terminologies as well. So it becomes a tedious
Absolutely, yeah.
task to explain what these are actually.
Exactly. Many of my colleagues, when I mention I'll get CSER CP,
Yeah,
I mean, they are trainees based here, but they actually don't know what is CSER CP. So
exactly. Yeah,
it's more popular term among the international medical graduates or
yeah,
international physicians who have moved here.
yeah.
Well, that sounds good. My next question to you is, what is dream pathway? I still don't understand what dream pathway is. Could you please
Okay.
explain that? What
Yeah,
is dream
sure.
pathway and how does that
So I
work?
think it is kind of very specific to emergency medicine. DREAM stands for Direct Route of Entry into Emergency Medicine, DREEM.
Double EM
Yeah,
rather than dream with
yeah.
A. So it's dream with double E. Okay.
True. So it is probably it comes under CSER CP. So if you're applying for training, so for example, if you've completed MRCEM in India, you come to the UK, you want to apply for higher specialty training. So you can do either two things. You can apply for ST4 if you have got all your competencies and all your rotations prior to applying for higher specialty training. For example, if you've got ITU, emergency medicine, anesthesia, internal medicine, and pediatric emergency medicine, you can apply for ST4. But if you're missing any of these rotations, or maybe more than one of these rotations, then you can still apply for higher specialty training. Instead of ST4, you can apply for ST3, that is called as Dream Pathway. But however, only tricky thing when applying for Dream or ST3 in Dream is ST3 itself lasts for usually 2 years rather than 1 year. So you
So
end
the
up
year
doing
actually
probably
lasts for
5 years of training instead of 3 years.
so let me see if I got this right. So
Yeah,
if you do dream pathway, your ST3,
yeah,
which is specialty training, the third year of your training,
yeah,
is not a 365-day year,
yeah,
or it's not a 12-month year. It's
yeah,
maybe 18 months, or maybe 2 years.
yeah, that's correct.
And this
So
is
what they
done
do
just
in those
to,
years is that
yeah,
they post you in those specialties which you were expected to do, but you're not done. For example, if you've not done ICU for 6 months, or if you've not done pediatrics or pediatric emergency medicine for 6 months,
fine,
they post in those
fine.
specialties, and then you can do those specialties rotations, and then you can move ahead in your training.
It's just to fill the gaps in your training
Yeah, exactly.
to enable you to reach ST4.
Yeah, true.
Okay, sounds good. And my last question is, can you give exams without being in a training post? I mean, I guess the question is, can you give exams without being in a training post and as a non-training, which is CSER? And
Yeah.
my understanding so far is, based on what you have said, is
Mhm.
yes, we can give
Yes.
exams from non-training post or not being in a training post.
True. That's a very common confusion because that's kind of a new concept or a very different concept when if you compare it to Indian exams. For example,
Yeah.
in India, for postgraduate trainees, we have exams like MD, DNB, MD and DNB basically. So you can't give those exams if you're not in any kind of training post. You can't just say, I've got these many years of experience, so I want to give MD anesthesia or MD emergency medicine or DNB exam at the end of like 3 or 4 years. But however, if in the UK, for example, if you're working in the emergency department for like, say, I think there are like specific number of years you need to be working as an experience. You can have a look. We'll give the link in the description. But if you're, for example, I think it is 7 years. If you've worked for 7 years in emergency departments since you're finishing foundation program, then irrelevant of you being in a training post or not, you can still give the exam. So, for example, FRCM exams. So, but even if you clear your exams or if you pass your exams, you cannot still become a consultant if you have not completed either a training post or CSER. Your name will not be in a specialist register. However, you can use the post nominals FRCEM if you give your exams.
Okay. So let me get this again. So
Yeah.
CCT
Yeah.
is when you do full training in the UK. CSER CP,
Yeah.
half training in
Yeah.
some other part of the world, and then you jump to
True.
ST4,
Yeah.
which is higher specialty training,
Yeah.
ensuring that you've got all the documents for the
Yeah.
first 3 years. These two are training posts.
Yeah.
You get a training number.
Yeah.
And
they
you're
do
looked
give the
after.
same exam.
Yeah. They also give all the same exams,
Yeah.
the FChem exams. And then there's the non-training post, which is CESR, and then you give the exams. You need to collect all the competencies.
Yeah.
If you want to become a consultant and go on the, if you want to go on the specialist register.
True, that's correct.
And if somebody who is not in CESR, who is not in CESR CP, who is not in CCT post, not doing a CCT post, he can still give the exams.
Yeah.
Even if he clears all the exams,
yeah,
he may not be appointed as a consultant because he's not
in the
doesn't have a
specialist
stack
register.
of documents.
Yeah,
He doesn't have the competencies.
exactly.
Okay,
That's
that
correct.
makes things simple. Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else to add, or I think we'll just end it off there. We've given quite a lot of information for people to
just during the
digest.
exams, if you want to compare it to kind of Indian scenario. So in India, if people complete their MD exams, they can still give the DNB exams in that specialty without being in the DNB program. So
yeah,
I think it is similar. Not exactly, but yeah, somewhat.
Sort of. So you don't need
even
to
if
go
you're
through the
not in a
training.
training program, you could still give the exams just by your experience, but you'll not be a consultant in the UK.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think we'll leave it here. We'll
Yeah.
see you guys in the next section. We hope you are finding this useful, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.